It started with a crash that could have been a gunshot. I jolted awake, heart pounding, sheets twisted around my legs. My phone glowed 2:43 a.m. I wasn't dreaming, the sound was real. Shattering glass, splintered wood. I grabbed the flashlight from my nightstand and crept into the hallway, the floorboards cold under my feet. Each step tightened my gut. Then I saw it. Our front door shattered, the frame cracked like a wishbone. Shards of frosted glass spilled onto the welcome mat. Standing in the middle, hands still gripping a garden rock the size of a softball, was her Eleanor Pierce, HOA president, retired librarian, terror in orthopedic shoes. I blinked, thinking I was still half asleep, but no, she was real, and she was furious. Eleanor wasn't just any HOA president. She was the kind who measured mailbox height with a ruler and issued citations for grass an inch too long. Her violation letters arrived weekly, typed in Courier New, sealed in manila envelopes, delivered with the passive aggression of a weaponized spreadsheet. Last month, she'd fine me for a non-regulation porch color, even though I'd matched it from the HOA-approved paint swatches at Sherwin-Williams. I'd push back. She didn't like that. Tonight, she escalated. "What the hell are you doing?" I barked, stepping into the room. Eleanor didn't flinch. Her silver curls bounced as she turned, smug as ever. "You've ignored 3 notices. I warned you. That porch is in violation of Code 2.3b. So you broke into my house?" "I didn't break in," she snapped. "I was inspecting the entryway. With a rock. It was obstructed." That's when I realized this wasn't just HOA drama anymore. This was criminal. I pulled out my phone, thumb hovering over the call icon. "Don't even think about it," she said, squinting at me like I was the trespasser. Too late. I tapped. "Sarah," I said when my wife answered, voice thick with sleep. She smashed the door. A beat of silence. "She what?" "Eleanor, HOA Karen herself. Rocked through the glass. Standing in our leave-wying room right now. Stay calm. I'll be there in 10. Call it in. That's felony vandalism." "I know. And don't let her leave." Sarah's 5 feet 8 inches, runs 3 miles before breakfast, and carries a badge that says Chief of Police, Willow Creek County. She doesn't take crap from anyone, especially not someone who thinks HOA rules trump state law. Eleanor was still muttering, pacing the porch like a woman trying to remember why she's angry. I opened the front door app, activated the doorbell cam footage, and dialed dispatch. "This is WYD Carter at 143 Oak Ridge. I have an active vandalism situation, suspect on scene." The dispatcher recognized my name, Sarah's husband. The tone shifted. "We're sending a patrol unit now." 5 minutes later, flashing lights painted the neighborhood blue and red. Sarah arrived just ahead of them, in uniform. The moment she stepped out of the cruiser, Eleanor's jaw dropped. "You called her," she sneered. "That's my wife," I said. "No," Sarah corrected, stepping forward with practiced calm. "I'm your chief of police. Step away from the property." Eleanor scoffed. "This is a CIVYL matter. An HOA enforcement." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "You destroyed private property. That's criminal." "I was ensuring compliance." "You brought a rock to a house at 2:43 a.m. and shattered a locked door," Sarah interrupted, gesturing to the broken frame. "That's not enforcement. That's breaking and entering." The responding officers flanked her quietly. One bagged the rock for Eve Denke. Another took photos, zooming in on the shards, the damage, the smear of dirt Eleanor had tracked in with her sandals. Eleanor kept sputtering about regulations until Sarah raised a hand. "You have the right to remain silent. I suggest you use it." Eleanor paused, doubt flickering across her face. Then she saw the neighbors watching, porch lights flicking on, curtains twitching, cameras recording. Everyone had a Karen story. Tonight, they'd get closure. "Chief," an officer said, "we're finding prior complaints from this address." "And others?" "Others?" I asked. The officer nodded. "Looks like she's had incidents." While Eleanor was handcuffed, I watched Sarah work calm, commanding, precise. This was what she did best: cut through noise, expose truth, protect the people no one else believed. I felt a twinge of pride I hadn't felt in weeks. Eleanor's clipboard was no match for the law. Later, as officers took statements and sealed off the scene, Sarah and I stood in the Lee VYing room, staring at what used to be our front door. "You okay?" she asked softly. "Honestly, yeah. Sorry I wasn't here faster." "You were perfect." We stood in silence. Then Sarah smiled faintly. She really picked the wrong house, huh? Yeah, I said. She thought this was her kingdom and forgot she walked into a courtroom. But this wasn't over. What Sarah uncovered next would shake the entire HOA and reveal that Eleanor's reign of terror ran deeper than we imagined. The morning after Eleanor shattered our door, I woke to sunlight streaming through a plywood board and the smell of fresh coffee. Sarah was already dressed, seated at the kitchen table, flipping through printed HOA bylaws and incident reports like she was prepping for court. I raised an eyebrow. You pulled records already? She looked up over her mug. DVYD, she didn't just crack our door. She cracked the dam. And I'm about to let it flood. What she'd found was staggering. 5 complaints, 3 from elderly neighbors, 2 from single parents. Each was filed quietly, misclassified as CIVYL disagreements. In one case, Eleanor trespassed into a backyard to measure patio furniture while the owner was away. In another, she screamed at a babysitter for sidewalk chalk art, then filed a report for graffiti. In all 5, she claimed HOA authority, intimidated, and walked away unchallenged. Until now. By noon, word spread like wildfire. Photos of the broken door circulated in the neighborhood app. One post read, "The HOA queen finally crossed the wrong line. Police chief's husband, let's go." Another, "Eleanor vandalized my porch, got a violation for a wind chime. Time to speak up." My phone buzzed nonstop texts, emails from neighbors who'd whispered frustrations but were now stepping into the light. People weren't afraid anymore. Eleanor's illusion of invincibility had shattered like my front door. That evening, Sarah called a community meeting, not as police chief but as a neighbor. We met at the park across from the clubhouse, folding chairs, clipboards, open air. People came in droves. Maria Gomez, fined for unauthorized flowers. Anil Sharma, accused of violating roofline symmetry for solar panels. Even the Wilsons, warned for excessively playful Halloween decor, a smiling inflatable pumpkin. One by one, they spoke, each story another nail in Eleanor's narrative. Then came Clara, a shy newcomer. She told me my son's autism therapy equipment made the yard look like a daycare disaster. I cried for days. The crowd went silent. Sarah stood beside her, hand on her shoulder. We're not going to let that happen again. People applauded, cheered. For the first time, we weren't just neighbors, we were a movement. Eleanor was out on bond but lacked her usual arrogance. She avoided eye contact at the grocery store, pulled her car into the garage before the door fully opened. People had questions. Why was she unchecked? Why hadn't the HOA board stopped her? What else was she hiding? The answer came from Tom and Gwen, HOA treasurer for 6 years. At the second community gathering, he stepped forward with a folder of spreadsheets. "I didn't want to be part of this," he began, voice trembling, "but I can't stay silent." He showed financial reports, never circulated line items labeled miscellaneous enforcement, thousands unaccounted for. Eleanor had reimbursed herself for materials, travel, even incident response fees. One line caught everyone's eye. Dula 1248, door restoration incident, Oak Ridge. Our house. Filed before she'd smashed the glass. Sarah leaned in. She premeditated it. Tom nodded. She thought no one would check. The crowd murmured. This wasn't just petty power, it was fraud. By week's end, Sarah coordinated with the DA's office. Eleanor faced vandalism charges, misappropriation of HOA funds, abuse of authority, and CIVYL harassment. The HOA board scheduled an emergency vote to suspend her, but the community had already voted with their voices, stories, unity. The night of the emergency HOA board meeting felt like the Super Bowl of neighborhood justice. The community center hadn't seen such a crowd since the 2013 4th of July potluck. Folding chairs were dragged from closets. People stood shoulder to shoulder, some bringing lawn chairs. Someone live-streamed for those who couldn't attend. Eleanor sat at the panel table, arms crossed, lips thin. If she thought this was another stage-managed affair, she misread the room. The room was done. The meeting was called to order by HOA Vice President Karen Holt, usually timid but now speaking with conviction. Tonight's meeting includes a formal motion to suspend Board President Eleanor Pierce's pending investigation into allegations including misuse of HOA funds, unauthorized enforcement, and property damage. The room broke into gasps and applause. Eleanor blinked. This wasn't a war she could win with citations. Public comment opened, and the line formed fast. Residents stepped to the mic, calm, collected, with receipts. I got a violation for drying beach towels on my fence while my neighbor did the same and never heard a word. Why? I asked Eleanor to stop parking on my lawn. Eleanor entered my backyard without notice while I was on vacation. My security camera caught it. She said she was investigating fence height. That's trespassing. She accused my daughter's lemonade stand of violating food permit laws. She was 6. Every story was another crack in the dam. Then Sarah stepped forward, not in uniform. She didn't need the badge, she had the truth. I've been your neighbor for 8 years. I kept my badge out of neighborhood issues because I believed in process and people. But what happened at my house wasn't about porch colors or bylaws. Her voice sharpened. It was about power. About someone who believed she was above the law. Eleanor rolled her eyes. Sarah didn't blink. She shattered our door with a rock in the middle of the night. She filed reimbursement for it before committing the act. And she's been doing this unchecked for years. She held up the HOA financial audit. The Dinke is here. So I'm asking, not as your police chief, but as your neighbor, are we going to let this continue? Or are we going to take our community back? The room exploded applause, cheers, a standing ovation. Eleanor shrank. Karen Holt called the vote. For board members, all hands raised. Eleanor Pierce, suspended immediately, stripped of signing authority, barred from HOA communications. She stood, knocking over her chair. This is a witch hunt, she hissed. You're letting emotion override procedure. I've done everything to keep this place from falling apart. No, someone called. You made everyone afraid to live in it. Security escorted her out. She muttered threats, lawsuits, curses about Sarah, me, the board. But no one followed her. She left alone. After the meeting, neighbors lingered in the parking lot talking, laughing, crying. They thanked me, Sarah, Karen, Tom, who exposed the money trail. You saved us. I finally feel like I live in my house again. We stayed out until nearly midnight. Then Sarah and I walked home hand in hand under the streetlights. At our patched front door, I stopped. You know, I said, she thought she could break this down, and we'd fold. Sarah turned to me. But she forgot one thing. What's that? She smiled. She smashed the door of the one house where the homeowner sleeps beside the law. Eleanor's downfall wasn't just legal, it was personal, symbolic, neighborhood-wide. In the weeks that followed, Willow Creek transformed from a place of whispered complaints to one where people laughed on front lawns. The fear was gone, replaced by accountability. The investigation into Eleanor's actions moved swiftly, thanks to Tom's disclosures and Sarah's line to the DA's office. The case expanded beyond our door. Dozens of falsified reimbursement claims over 5 years, thousands for phantom repairs, a noise complaint enforcement budget that funded monthly spa massages, a community security lighting purchase traced to a smart lighting system at her home. Textbook fraud, hidden under HOA letterhead and neighborhood apathy. But not anymore. Sarah worked with investigators, but stayed out of court to avoid conflicts. Still, word spread. The chief's husband was targeted, and the chief lit the match that burned the sham down. Eleanor was charged with criminal vandalism, Class D felony, misappropriation of HOA funds, filing false documents, CIVIL harassment, intimidation, and trespassing. She pleaded not guilty, but her voice didn't carry. The community wasn't just watching, we were speaking. The HOA held its first true election in years, open nominations, public debates, mail-in ballots. No hidden meetings, no Eleanor-approved candidates. Anil Sharma, the solar panel guy, won president. Karen Holt became VYC president. Clara, Shy Clara, became community liaison because she'd spoken truth when it hurt most. At the first board meeting, no one complained. Instead, they shared ideas, painting the utility box, hosting a summer block party, updating the handbook to be clearer, simpler, kinder. They created a new mission statement. Our neighborhood is not defined by rules, but by respect. It felt like home. Sarah and I replaced our door. Our son, Ethan, picked the color steel blue with a bronze handle. Looks like a spy MOVY, he said proudly. Sarah smirked. Perfect. Let's keep the bad guys guessing. On Eleanor's trial day, the courtroom wasn't packed. People didn't need to watch, they knew the outcome wasn't just about her sentence, but what had changed. The DA presented receipts, fraud, falsified emails, a security budget that paid for do lot 800 automatic blinds. Eleanor squirmed, tried to blame a disorganized board, lack of training. The jury didn't buy it, especially when Tom testified. She told me to sign blank checks. I did because I was scared. Then came Sarah's body cam footage from the incident night. Eleanor's voice filled the courtroom. You think this porch matters? I own this neighborhood. You think your badge scares me? I run this block. A hush fell. The gavel dropped softly. Guilty on all counts. Sentencing would follow, but guilty was enough for every neighbor who'd hesitated to hang a flag or plant a flower. That night, we hosted a Freedom on the Porch party. Everyone brought something: lawn chairs, string lights, music, lemonade, tamales, brownies, stories, smiles. We projected The Incredibles on a white sheet. Kids laughed, adults relaxed, and no one checked for rule violations. I realized Eleanor didn't build this neighborhood, we did, and we were rebuilding it better, together. At sentencing, Eleanor entered in beige slacks, no clipboard, no smirk. The judge addressed her calmly. Miss Pierce, you weaponized authority you were never granted. You manipulated finances, harassed neighbors, and destroyed property, hiding behind policy. You turned a neighborhood into a jurisdiction and ruled with fear. Eleanor lowered her eyes. I sentence you to 18 months in state custody for felony vandalism and HOA fund fraud. You will pay due lot $18,400 in restitution, lose your right to serve in any registered neighborhood association, and be issued a no-contact order for every complainant. The gavel dropped with finality. Outside, the air was crisp. Sarah stood beside me in uniform. Ethan was at school but had drawn a comic, a superhero mom, a blue door, justice wins. I kept it in my jacket pocket, close to my chest. Willow Creek changed profoundly. People built forward. The community center held workshops, reading HOA guidelines, resident rights, gardening without permission slips. The board, under Anil and Karen, made transparency standard open QVA as violations needing second reviews and photos. Kids left toys on lawns, porch swings creaked, wind chimes danced. Ethan and I built a tiny library in our yard, stocked with mystery novels, superhero comics, and a note, never let silence win. It became a favorite, with notes tucked in page thank yous, drawings, poems. One read, "This door opened more than a house. It opened all of ours." Months passed. Sarah received a Community Service award. Didn't tell me she'd been nominated, just set it on the counter and said, "Guess I've been promoted by the people." I kissed her. Still the chief in this house. She raised an eyebrow. Want to test that theory? We laughed. One night, I found a welcome mat outside our door. This house, Sir VY Ved HOA Karen. Sarah swore it wasn't her, still doesn't admit it, but it belongs there, a reminder of how far we've come, who we became when we stood together. The door is still steel blue. It doesn't shine, doesn't match the block, but it's ours. And it stood long after the woman who tried to tear it down was gone.